There's a lot of ways that you can embarrass a CEO or a security risk manager. One of the easy ways is to ask which of our systems is the most valuable, not which is the most important or which is the most secure or which is the most sensitive, but which is the most valuable. This spreadsheet is designed to tell you exactly that. In uncertain terms, looking at 8 different criteria, 5 different ratings for those elements, and this is a worked example. You can download the free PDF of the output, and there's also, you can purchase a template. But if you'd like to see how it works, stick around. My name is Julian Talbot, and I'm the lead author of the Security Risk Management Body of Knowledge, as well as about a dozen other books on risk management. This template is designed to tell you this information here. The spreadsheet results, which are the most important. So we've got 5 systems here that we're looking at, and it's not necessarily obvious which is the most important. You can see these drawn in here, essentially the SCADA system, or the operational technology, the process control that actually produces, in this fictional example of a water treatment plant, which is actually most important. Now, it turns out SCADA is the most important. We've looked at customer contact CRM, we looked at the water quality laboratory system, the outage and water quality notification map, which essentially is a public website telling people our water is not working, you need to boil your water for a couple of days in this area, or we have these hazards for potentially immunocompromised people might need to take extra precautions. There's also this maintenance management system. Start with, not this, but we start with essentially the initial concept in part 1. So let me walk you through this example here, and this is a worked example. This essentially is the spreadsheet that we're going to start with, or the output that we're going to deal with. This is the SCADA example. I want to draw your attention to this. So down the left here we have essentially the various columns and elements. These are the system elements, the criteria. We're talking, and I'll zoom in a moment and show you, things like financial, reputation, health and safety. Across here, we're looking at the consequence, negligible through to extreme, essentially. And I'll show you in a worked example how this works. This is the first criteria. So let's zoom in on that. So we're looking at financial, and we work down there. Now in this case, there's some text in here, which is free text. It's been rated as a 2, which is minor. And if I change that drop-down menu, it changes accordingly. Now, I'll change it back. The elements that are chosen from this are based on example criteria. So you need to change this yourself. If you're working with a 40-person team in a consultancy or construction business, $10 million is going to be a major element for you, not negligible. If you're working in a finance bank, for example, $10 million can be a rounding error, something that's spent by morning tea. So you need to adjust these. But essentially in this example, we're considering permanent loss in equity value over $250 million, or a permanent loss in recurring cash flow of $250 million, $250,000 as extreme. So we work down through these, and you can see, interestingly enough, we get down to the bottom here, the ratings of 5, 5, and 5. So we're looking at customer service with an argument there, why? And I'm going to bring you to this one to draw your attention to the comment that's put here into health and safety. It ranked a 5, and this is because in the worst case, essentially, unsafe drinking water can kill people. So, and this is the SCADA system. Nothing in this system is secret. Obviously, that's different from security. We don't want people hacking it and interfering with it. But the actual content of the information isn't classified or sensitive in any way. The value of it is, though, it's got to be operational, because people can die if this doesn't work. If we look, for example, at a blank spreadsheet, one of the things that's important in this, assume that we're considering finances. We're going to put a comment in here about what the financial measures are. We might determine that it rates a minor and give it a 2. Now, you can go down through here, 1, 2, 3, whatever you choose, and you'll see this number here changes. This is blank. When I change this drop down, it picks it up from your criteria, which are demonstrated earlier. Now these are all customizable. The spreadsheet's protected, so you can't accidentally type over something, but it's not password protected, so you can unprotect it at any point. When we get to the bottom here, we find at the moment it's taken the highest of these. Now if I decide that, let's say safety for example is the example we spoke about earlier. If I rate that as a 5, goes to extreme, this goes to extreme, and that's part of the magic. You could take the average of all of these and end up with 2 or 3 for your systems, but it's really important to understand what's the highest value of your highest concern in each system. So in this example, in the previous example, we're talking about the SCADA systems. So we're looking at various elements of that. So let's have a look across these down the bottom here. So you can see if we're looking at SCADA, now we're looking at the Water Quality Management Laboratory. That's got its own criteria. And again, with each of these, we're looking at these 8 elements and we're looking at 5 different criteria for the consequence for it. We can look at each of these in turn, scroll across, and they all are assessed independently. Now, if you disagree with a rating, that's fine. But the correct approach at this point is to actually understand why. So if you commentary in here explains why this particular rating was established, sometimes it might not agree with what you experience on the ground. And the question is then not just to simply go, well, you know what, I think I'm going to knock this one down to a 1. The correct approach is to have a look at it and say, well, why? Is it a 1? Is it a 2? Go back to the foundational principles. And when you're setting this up, it's critical that you actually work with the risk manager or the risk framework for your organization to make sure that it matches what you're using as risk criteria. One of the other little elements in here as well, and you can type over these, I can simply just type a 0 there and it's done. It's important to not leave this blank. I can just leave this blank, but what it means when it's blank is that nobody touched it. Nobody thought about it. So if I put a 0 in there, it means, you know, we looked at it, we said, no, not applicable. Or we looked at it and we said, it's a 2. And that clarifies that each element has actually been addressed. So as we get into this further on, you can see as we work through the tabs, and that part 3 is the area where an auditor or a board of inquiry will be looking. They want to see what was the system, what was assessed, what's the current state of the system, you know, was it retired, what's the user documentation, where is the user documentation, how do you manage change control, how do you do it if somebody's responsible for change on their last day on a Friday afternoon when they're leaving to retire, how do you manage these things? And these are all documented in part 3. You'll find also throughout there's a glossary of terms to explain, give consistency to it. There's a crosswalk between things like NIST and the PSPF and various other elements. So depending where you are, you might want to modify that. Frequently asked questions element. And of course, it all comes back to this is the heart and soul of this register of results. That's the part that goes in the board report. I hope that was useful. You can find the free PDF download of this in the link at srmbok.com, and you can also find the spreadsheet downloadable with the worked example there. Thank you very much.